Okay, welcome everyone. As we welcome in Mark Frankel and Mel Zachter, Eddie Chazan, Dr. Udell, it's good to have you on Zoom. Irving Fishbaum, Aaron Swade, Stephen Holtzman, Dr. Guy, Shelley Zeitlin, Ruven Pollack, Dr. Block, Marshall Castle, Shimon Deer, Michal, I'm not sure who Robert is, Ilya Shutman, Berish Gasserman. Oh, that's Berish. No, Ilya Moshe Lehman, Abe Arbach, Yitzi Muller, Rabbi Kranz, Avi Ament, Yehuda from Yerushalayim, Nachman Chapler. Why did I see so many faces? I'm blocked out over here. And Richard Rosenzweig is joining us, so it's really good. Got a lot of people on who much better. Richard also much better when you're on Facebook and we could share you with everybody else and be mechazik the Olam. And David Health got on Kol HaLoshin. We are holding on. First, I should. You see, I'm a little scatterbrained over here. I should tell us so much stuff on this table here. We are sponsored by AB Spry for the safety of our chayalim. You know, it's such gut-wrenching. It feels so terrible when you see these young faces, young, promising, beautiful faces of these chayalim that were murdered. It just makes us realize how much we have to daven and learn for their safety. You know, I saw that they already destroyed 400 tunnel shafts. And each one of those tunnels is like a death trap for our chayalim. So anyway, AB Spry wisely is sponsoring for their safety, learning for their safety, for their victory, for the safety of Klal Yisrael, and for Isuzev Ben Yuta. We sponsored by Shimon Klein, Lin Nishmas Asher Anshel Ben Yehuda, and Gittel Bas Shimon Pinchas, and by Irving Fishbaum for his Gesund Isser Ben Rezel. I have delightful news for everybody that my grandson has come home today. So Baruch Hashem, my grandson has come home. Yes, he's come home today, and Mirz Hashem, the bris will either be on Sunday or on Monday. They're determining.
Is it in Rabbi's shul, or it's going to be by your son's shul?
No, it's going to be by my son. My shul is not big enough. My son's a very popular guy. I'm serious. I would love to have it in my shul, but my shul, just to accommodate the men and women that he's going to have, it's just simply not big enough. And also, my son is also a home team player. You know, if he has a simcha, he likes to share it with the people that he davens with, which I applaud. It's the right thing to do. So although I'd love to have it, but that's not going to happen. We're going to see. It's an interesting halachic question. You need on the 8th day after he was put off oxygen. So the question is do you go after the final test of 48 hours, or could you go from the first 24-hour test? So that will depend if the bris is on Sunday or on Monday. They'll determine that. But either way, it should be gesund and everything wonderful. We are holding by Omar Ilfa, which is 5 lines from the top of Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. 5 lines from the top of Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. Amar Ilfa, Behema B'Rishus Harabim, an animal is in the Rishus Harabim. We know whose animal it is. You just have to look at his face. Marshall's Marshall's animal is in the Rishus Harabim. Upashta tzavara, it sticks out its neck. V'ochla me'al gabei chaverta, and it eats stuff that was on the back of Beresh's animal. Now this is in the Rishus Harabim. Now remember, for Shane, you're not chayiv in the Rishus Harabim. But says the Gemara chayeves, Marshall is chayiv. My time. Why? Because gabei chaverta kechatzer hanizik dami. Because the back of Beresh's animal is like the the rishus of the nizik, because that's private property, the back of Beresh's animal. So the Gemara says, okay, that's an interesting theory. Lema Messiah, let's adduce a proof to this. If Nachman's backpack is slung around his back, and Marshall's animal stretches its neck out and eats from Nachman's backpack, chayeves. So you see that the backpack is considered rishus hanizik. Says the Gemara, no, not necessarily. Kida Amar Rava b'kaifetes, where Marshall's animal jumped up. Now, to jump up is unusual behavior, and that's why he's chayiv, because Keren b'rishus rabim is chayiv, and it's, as Marshall will surely point out, he has his calculator out already. It's only a chatzi nezek because it's Keren, it's a tam. It's only a chatzi nezek, but that's why it's chayiv. So Hakanami, just like Rava said it elsewhere, it's talking about when the animal jumped. And it's Mishuna, Hakanami b'kaifetzes. So the Gemara says, incidentally, this the Gemara does all over Shas. You said that Rava said it somewhere. V'heicha itma de Rava. Where did Rava say this? Ahadam Rabbi Isha, Behem b'rishus rabim. Marshall's animal is in rishus rabim. Holcha v'achla. If it's walking and it eats, Torah, because that's Shein B'rishus Rabim. Shein B'rishus Rabim is Pater. Amda v'achla, if it stands and it eats, Kayev. So the Gemara finds that odd. It's normal for an animal to stand also. The animal doesn't have to be walking all the time. Maishna holcha de'urcheyu, it's normal, and normal is Shein B'rishus Rabim, which is Pater. Amda nami urcheyu, when it stands, it's also normal. Amarava b'kaifetzes. It's talking about where it jumps. It stood and jumped. Stood and jumping. That's mishuna, and it's mishuna. That's chayiv because it's Keren b'rishus rabim. Now the plot thickens. The plot thickens. When you deal with Marshall, you have to be on your feet. You have to expect interesting developments. So.
You're back. Here I come.
By the way, I just want to add to that. Watch your front and your sides as well. Now,
Guard the stuff on your animal's back.
Yeah. Now, here, Marshall's animal wanders into Eddie's property because Eddie's been smirking. So Marshall's animal wanders into Eddie's premises, and Eddie has a bale of hay. Marshall's animal rolls out the bale of hay into the rishus rabim and eats it in the rishus rabim. Now you can bet you that Marshall says he's pater because he ate it in the rishus rabim, and Shane in the rishus rabim is pater. Eddie says, "What? Your animal brought it out into the rishus rabim." So let's see the Gemara inside. This is a very interesting question. Boy,
Gezel, but no Nezek, right?
Huh?
The animal's chayav on Gezel, but not Nezek.
Well, an animal is not chayav on anything. An animal is not chayav on anything. But let's see what happens here. Boy, Reb Zeira, misgalgel mahu. If it rolls it, what's the din? So the Gemara says, "Hey, chidami, what's the case?" Kegain de kaima amir b'rishus hayachid. Eddie has a bale of hay in his property. Marshall's animal wandered into the property, v'kamiskalgal v'asi, and rolled the bale of hay out of the rishus rabim. Out of Eddie's property, v'asi rishus hayachid the rishus rabim, and rolled it from Eddie's property into the public domain. Mai. So, Tajma, the Gemara seems to bring a very good proof. The Tani Rebbe Chia, Masui Miktsasa b'fnim or Miktsasa b'chutz. If Eddie has a burden, and in this case it's means a bundle of food, a bunch of food, Achla b'fnim chayeves. Marshall's animal, what it eats inside is chayiv. Achla b'chutz, if he eats it outside, patura. Now, the Gemara thinks what this means is if the animal ate it while it was inside, he's chayiv. If he rolled it outside and he ate it, it's patur. My lab misgalgo v'asi, where it's talking about where he rolled it. No, it says in my lie. No. Ema achla, if he ate it, al mashe b'fnim, that which was inside, chayeves. Al mashe b'chutz, the part that was outside, patura. Or iba yisema, we could also say it's talking about a different case. Ki kamer Reb Chia b'psila di aspasta, where there are long stalks of aspasta. Aspasta is animal food that they cut down very young and it keeps on regrowing. And they're long stalks. And here the Gemara says, since it's not different food, it's a long stalk that stretches from inside to outside. So there, everybody would agree that if he starts eating it inside and it follows and he finishes the whole thing because he pulls it while he's eating it on the inside, he's going to be chayiv for everything. If he starts eating it on the outside, he's going to be patur for everything. But the Gemara doesn't bring a proof to the question that we said, but I would say that it's probably mistavra, that the din is that if Marshall's animal rolls something from Eddie's property to the Rishus Harabim, even though he eats it in the Rishus Harabim, the animal will be chayiv. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that that's the halacha. Okay, 2 dots. Now here again, we have an ambiguity in the Mishnah. It's a very interesting ambiguity. Let's look back at the lashon of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows. It's the Mishnah of Shane, the second Mishnah. It's a very interesting ambiguity in the lashon of the Mishnah. Here, listen to what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says, "Keitzad hashein mu'edes lechal es haroyla." Right? Where is shein a mu'ed in the Rishus HaNizik? To eat the food that it usually eats. And abeima mu'edes lechal peiris v'yirakas. Achla ksusay kelim, if it eats, however, pajamas or utensils, so that's, of course, keren, mishalim chatzi nezik. When do we say you're chayiv b'rishus hanizik? Avol b'rishus harabim patur. Now, if you read the Mishnah literally, then the Bamed Devar Mamurim is going back both on the case where it's normal to eat and also on the case of the pajamas, where he eats the pajamas, where he eats the utensils. Now that's a problem, because where he eats the pajamas, that's Chatzi Nezek, that's Keren, and Keren is Chayiv in the Rishus Harabim. So why should it be only in the Rishus HaNizik? So there's one school of thought that the Bamed Devar Mamur Rishus HaNizik of Rishus Harabim Pater is only going on the first part of the Mishnah, on the Shein, because Shein is Pater in the Rishus Harabim. It's not going on the Keren, on the pajamas. But there's another position that says it's going on the pajamas also. And how could it be going on the pajamas? It's Keren. Because the reason why is because Marshall should not have left his pajamas on the street. And therefore Marshall is already a Meshana. And if somebody deviates and somebody else deviates, he's not chayiv. Let's see it inside. Now Gemara addresses this ambiguity. When it says in the Mishnah, Ba'medva Mamurim, only in the Rishus HaNizik, Ahai. Amarav Akulu. It's going even on the case of the pajamas. And even in the Rishus Rabbim, where Marshall's animal eats Eddie's pajamas, or Eddie's utensils, he's going to be potter. My timer, what's the reason? It's Karen, and Karen is chayiv in the Rishus Rabbim. Oh, here it's different. Because Kala Mishana, Marshall deviated. So Kala Mishana, Oba Achar Vishina, whoever is Mishana, and then somebody else comes and also deviates. So Kala Mishana, Oba Achar Vishina, whoever deviates, and then the owner of the animal also deviates, potter. Shmuel says no. It's only fruit and vegetables because that's Shane, and Shane is potter in Rishus Rabbim. That's unusual, so that's Karen chayeves. Reish Lakish, however, sides with Rav that you'd be chayev even for the pajamas because Marshall was Mashana, and therefore Irving's animal that eats it is somebody coming and Mashana after a person is already Mashana. If you deviate after a deviant, you're potter. And Reish Lakish follows his reasoning. Dama Reish Lakish, listen to this case. Shtei paras, 2 cows. Rishus Rabbim. Achas revutza. Marshall's animal is reclining. Now, what animal reclines in the middle of 13th Avenue? So Marshall's animal is reclining. V'achas maleches, and Irving's animal is walking. Ba'ata maleches berevutza. Irving's animal kicks Marshall's animal. Now remember, Irving's animal kicking, that's Karen, which normally would be chayiv in the Rishus Rabbim because it's mishuna to kick. But it says, bata maleches berevusa, if Irving's animal that's walking kicks Marshall's animal, p'tura. Revutza b'mahaleches, Marshall's animal, who's lying, kicks Irving's animal, chayeves. Then he's chayiv because Irving's animal was walking, minding his own business, and Marshall's animal from the floor kicks him. That's Karen. Karen is chayiv in the Rishus Rabbim. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. Rabbi Yochanan says like Shmuel. Rabbi Yochanan Amar lo yishanu ela peris v'yirakas. It's only fruit and vegetables. Avaksus v'kelim chayeves. But pajamas and utensils, you're chayiv. So says the Gemara, Lema Rabbi Yochanan, less later Reish Lakish. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan, that means that Rabbi Yochanan argues in the case of Marshall's animal lying down. He'll argue that when Irving's animal kicks it, Irving's animal is going to be chayiv, and we don't say that somebody is Mishana, Ba'acha Mishana is potter. So let's say that he doesn't hold of even the din afilu b'shtei paras. Says the Gemara, loy. What?
I'm sorry.
Says the Gemara, loy. Says the Gemara, loy. Loylam islay. He agrees that when Irving's animal kicks Marshall's animal on the floor, Irving is potter. However, clothing is not so simple. When Marshall walks in the street, Marshall has the right to rest a little bit. So he has the right to put down his package of pajamas. He has a right to put down his china, to rest. So therefore, he's not considered a mishana, and therefore, when an animal kicks it, that's Karen B'Rishus Rabbim, and it's chayiv. Sus of the Inche de Manche. ksus, clothing of the inche de manche glime or mispache. It's normal for a person to put down his package of clothing and take a rest. Ava behema, an animal sprawling in the middle of 13th Avenue. That's simply not normal, as we all know, right? Almost all of us know. 28 Zoomers here, 27 of us know that
I'm tired. What can I say?
that it's not normal for the animal to sprawl in the Rosh Hashanah. So then when Irving's animal kicks it, Irving will be potter because lav that's not normal.
Why is
Wait,
it
where did he
eating
sprawl?
pajamas? Why eating pajamas is it considered Karen?
Because an animal doesn't eat pajamas.
No, I understand, but it's doing hana. It's hana lazeko. It's not.
No.
It doesn't just tear it up.
Any shane is only when it's normal to eat it. If it's not normal, that's not shane. That's mishuna, that's Karen. Now, we said that even if Marshall's animal eats Rabbi Kran's fruit in the Rosh Hashanah, he's not totally off the hook. Because if it was supper time, and now because of the fact that he ate Rabbi Kran's fruit, Marshall doesn't have to make him supper, so he pays for what he benefits. So therefore the Mishnah says, V'imnenis b'shalemes ma'ashenemes. Now comes the question of how do we calculate that? V'kama. Rabba Omer Dmei Omer. If Marshall's animal ate expensive barley, Marshall could say, yeah, I would have gave it supper, but I don't give my animal top of the line, grade A food. My animal is not a foodie, and even if he is, I'm not bankrolling his foodiness, right? So I'll give him a bale of hay, and that's it.
Yeah, cheap New York
Right,
hot dogs.
right. Believe me, Marshall, you would waste hot dogs on the animal. Now, so the comma, Rabba Amar Dmei Amir, like Rabbi Avram says, straw, giving him hay, and that's it. Rava Amar, Rava says, if he ate barley, then even someone like Marshall will give his animal a treat if he can get it cheap. If he can get it for only 2/3 of the price. So therefore, if he ate barley, then Marshall has to reimburse him for demei sa'orim bezul. The cost of barley, or not all the barley that he ate, only the barley that he would give him for supper, at the rate where it's 2/3 of the price, at Black Friday, prices. Tani Kavasi de Rabbit is a brisa like Rabbit, it's only straw. Tani Kavasi de Rabbit, you have to pay the better food, but on a cheap rate. Tani Kavasi de Rabbit, Reb Shimon Yochai Aimer Ein Mishalemes, Ela Demei Amr Bilvad. He only has to pay. He could say, look, I wouldn't have given him barley. I would just give him cheap hay. Tani Kavasi de Rava, Im Nenis Mishalemes Mashenenis. If he benefits, you pay what he benefits. Ketzad. Ochla kavoy kavayim. If he ate a kavor kavayim, ein oimim tishlum demeim. We don't say that he has to pay for their value, because first of all, it's in the Rosh Hashanah. In the Rosh Hashanah, he's potter. Ela oimdim kama adam rotza lahachal lebehem toidavar aroyla. How much a person would feed his animal something that's fit for it, afal pishein arogel, even though he doesn't give it such fancy food. And therefore, we calculate how much he would give of this barley, and he only pays the cheap price, 2/3 of the market price. Lefikach, therefore, achla chitim oidavar arala, if the animal ate wheat or something else that's toxic for it, not literally toxic, but unhealthy for it, then Marshall doesn't have to pay anything. Petura. So now we get into a real Talmudic subject. This is a subject that is used all over Shas, so it's really, really a nice subject to learn. I'm sorry, there's some people that I don't identify by name because I only see a phone number coming up. I think that might be Menachem Umansky. Or is that? Yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure. Anyway, but it's good to have 29 Zoomers here, and I've been very rude. I didn't welcome all our tremendous Talmidim here in the shul. That fills me with such pleasure. You know, we have here tonight almost a million. We have 9 people so far. 9 people. Wow. One more, and we could say Kaddish after this year. It's really. So we welcome in Rebbe Yafi, Saba, Rich Lenner, Kramer, Gedalia, Reb Kraus, Reb Avram Schenkman, and Pesach Siegelman. It's really, really very nice to have everybody here in the shul. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Actually, he was here. Mr. Herbst said he was coming. With Mr. Herbst, we would have had a million. Wow. Okay, now, who knows? Maybe by the Chumash we'll get more people and we could say a Kaddish. Says the Gemara, listen to this. Amalei Rav Chisda l'Rami Bar Chama. Rav Chisda said to Rami Bar Chama, who's a great man, they both were great people, Lo yavyis gabon be'urcha betchuma. It was Friday night, and you couldn't be in the Beis Medrash because you were outside of the Tchum, and you missed something. Boy, did you miss something. Di boilan milei mal yasa. There was a very interesting inquiry. Amar my milei mal yasa. What was the interesting inquiry? Amalei, this is a story of a squatter. Now, I have to tell you that I heard from one of my balabatim that he had such an incident. He had a property, and a woman and a child, a single mother, moved into his property. It was empty, and she claimed squatter's rights, and he had a hard time getting her out. It's unbelievable. Well, she broke in, set up, Mamish used the kitchen, traced the whole kitchen. It's really, really, really wild. So here's a squatter story. Fasten your seatbelt. Amalei hador b'chotzer chaveirai shaloi midaitai. Now, I hate to do this to Stephen, but you know who moved into your property in Florida. Stephen has some property. Stephen has some property in Boca, and he goes down, and squatting in the property is Marshall. He couldn't believe it, So, Amalei hador b'chotzer chaveirai shaloi midaitai. So Marshall is squatting in Stephen's property without his knowledge, and more importantly, without his consent. Does Marshall have to pay Stephen or not? Now, you know Marshall. Marshall says nobody was using it. I came, it was empty. It was a shud. I was going to go to the Marriott, but then I saw Stephen Holtzman. It was empty. So why should I, what do you think, I'm a fool? You know how much it costs to be in a Marriott in Boca? So, Hechidami, what's the case? If it's a place that Stephen doesn't rent anyway, and Marshall didn't need it because he has a brother-in-law living there, so he could have gone to his brother-in-law for free. So then why should Marshall pay? Zeloi nene. Marshall didn't get any benefit because it could have gone to his brother-in-law. V'zeloi chaser. And Stephen didn't lose anything. He wasn't renting it anyway. Ella, it must be b'chotzer dekaimaligre. Because Marshall was there, Stephen couldn't rent it out. V'gavra d'oven l'meger. And Marshall was saving money because he was going to go to the Marriott. So then, of course, Marshall has to pay. Zen ene v'zeh chaser. He's benefiting and Stephen is losing out. Loi tzricha. So here now is where we get to the story. Loi tzricha b'chotzer d'loi kaimaligra. Stephen wasn't using it. He's not coming down until January. So Stephen wasn't using it. V'gavra d'ovid l'mega. But Marshall would have had to pay in the Marriott. My. Motzi Amalok, could Marshall say to Stephen, hey, my chasartich, I didn't cause you to lose anything. Oy Dilma, or perhaps, Motzi Amar, Stephen could tell him, listen, pay, because Hoisanis, you saved money, otherwise you would have to pay at the Marriott. Amalei, so here, Rami Bar Chama said to Rav Chisda, what's the Milei Mal Yosef? I don't understand. Why are you saying that this is such a big question? Masnisani. It's a Mishnah. Now, he didn't tell him which Mishnah. So, hey, Masnisan. So, Rav Chisda asked him, what Mishnah? Amalei, so Rami Bar Chama did an interesting thing. You know, there is a school of thought that if you charge attendance for a share, people will value it more. If it's free, yeah. If you charge attendance, then it must be something, valuable. So he wanted him to appreciate it. So he said, L'chi teshamishli, do a service for me, and I'll tell you which Mishnah it is. So, Shakal Sudre, Rav Chisda took Rami Bar Chama's turban and karachle, and he folded it nicely. Amalei, he said, look, we learned in our Mishnah, imnenis mishalemes mashenenis, that if Marshall's animal ate in the Rishus HaRabim, he has to pay for what he benefited. Now, even though in the Rishus HaRabim is potter, but since Marshall benefited it, he has to pay. So right away in your mind you'll say, that's not a good comparison. Because if it was Irving's fruit, Irving lost. That's a case of Zen and Chaser. He ate Irving's fruit. And that's what Rava says. Amar Rava Kama loy chali v'loy margish. How this righteous person, Rami Bar Chama, never gets sick and never has worries. Gavra de Murray Saya, because Hashem is obviously on his side. That Rav Chisda didn't ask him the obvious question. The Afal Gav Deloy Domi Lamasnisan, even though this case, the case over here where Marshall stays in Stephen's property, Stephen didn't lose anything. He wasn't using it until January. Deloy Domi Lamasnisan, here in the case where Marshall's animal eats Irving's fruit, Irving did lose something. And yet, Kiblamine, yet Rav Chisda accepted the equation. But why? Hi, Zen Enev Zeh Chaser. The case where Marshall's animal eats Irving's fruit, that's a case where Marshall's animal benefited, he doesn't have to eat supper. And Irving lost, he lost his fruit. V'hai Zen Enev Zeh Chaser. Well, in the case of Stephen in Florida, Marshall benefited because he doesn't have to go to the Marriott, but Stephen didn't lose anything because he wasn't renting it out anyway. Now, Rami Bar Chama, the reason why he thought that it was a good comparison is because Rami Bar Chama holds if Irving left his fruit in the Rishus HaRabim, then it's tantamount to being mafkaret. And therefore it's a case of also Zen Nene V'Zoloi Chaser. Rami Bar Chama, Stam Peris B'Rishus HaRabim Afkurei Mifkurlu. And that's the raya that he wants to say, that even though it's loy chaser, that's a case of zen enev is a loy chaser, they have to pay. Now it's not mamish hefker.
Oh, okay.
It's not mamish hefker.
Then there shouldn't be any.
It's not mamish hefker, but it makes it to the madrega of loy chaser.
Okay.
Now, so we're going to look for other sources. This is a very interesting question. Zen enev v'zel loy chaser. You could make I know everybody would be on Stephen's side, just because who is the litigant is, but you really could hear both sides. You could hear Marshall's side. Listen, I didn't cost them a dime. Now, we're talking about where Marshall leaves the place, spick and span, and doesn't cause any damage. What did I cost him? Well, on the other hand, Stephen said, look, you were going to pay, you benefit, pay me. I'll make terms, you don't have to pay tax, I'll give you an AA reduction, I'll work something out. I'll give you tickets to the Blackhawks on the day where it's snowing.
It's not considered stealing, though? That he's, or this is past.
We're not talking about whether Marshall's a nice guy.
Hey!
Right? We're not talking about that. Now, so let's see the Gemara.
Charge for the share that
Let's see, Marshall, please, this has nothing to do with you. Now, Tanan, here's an interesting case. Marshall has property surrounding Shimon's property on all four sides. So Tanan, Hamakiv Chaveiroi Misholosh Ruchaisa. If Marshall builds a fence on three sides of Shimon's property, now he's not building it for Shimon, he's just building it for himself. So if he surrounds Shimon's property on three sides, V'gadar eser ishayin, and he fences in the first property, V'esashniya, the second property, V'esashlishis, and the third property, Ein mechayven I we can't make Shimon chip in. Because Shimon doesn't gain anything because his property is still open on one end. Haravias, but if he fences in the fourth side also, so now he's also completely enclosing Shimon's property. Mechayven Oisai, we make him pay. Now here is, why should we make him pay? Marshall didn't lose anything because he needs to fence it in for himself. That's why he's doing it. He's not doing it for Shimon. So this is a case of Zenan of Zalei Chaser. Right? Shimon is benefiting, but Marshall didn't lose anything because he needs to make the fence for himself. So Shmami no Zenan of Zalei Chaser Chayiv. Says the Gemara, no. Marshall says, I am Chaser because of Shimon. Because the reason why I need to put up this fence in the first place is because Shimon is there. And Shimon, he has dogs, and he has, there's Shani Hasam to Amalei at Garamtali Hakefa Yisera. The reason why I have to make all these fences is because you're there. Tajma.
But he can't.
Huh?
But he can't make him pay for that.
No, he doesn't want him to pay. He wants him to chip in.
Right, that's what I mean. That's not a dollar amount because you want it because you don't feel secure.
No, we're just saying that it's not considered loy chasar. He's not losing anything because of Shimon. He is chasar because of Shimon. Because if Shimon wouldn't be there, he wouldn't need the fence. Tajma, Amar Rab Yaisi. Now here, let's see this case. Im Amad v'nikif v'gadar eseravias, Marshall made the three walls. And then Shimon came and made the fourth wall. So then Shimon is revealing that he wants to be enclosed. So then we roll on him to chip in on the other three also. Im Amar Nika v'Gadar Eseravias Megalgalon Alav Esakol. Then we roll on him the other three. So here, the Gemara makes a diak. Taima, according to this opinion, Taima de Gadar Nikif. It's only if Shimon makes the fourth wall. Hamakif, but if Marshall made the fourth wall, Potter. Now, that means although it's a case of Zenene, but since it's Loi Chasar, because Marshall doesn't lose anything, he has to do it anyway, Shimon is Potter. Shmamina Zenene v'Zeloi Chasar Potter. Here, the Gemara says, when we say Potter, it doesn't mean that if Marshall does all four walls, Shimon is Potter entirely. It means Shimon is Potter from chipping into these expensive walls. Shimon would say, yeah, of course I want an enclosure, but Marshall, what does Marshall have? Cars? Frankfurters? They're not coming into my property. Right? So it would be enough for me just a hedge of thorns. Shani Hasan Damalei Ledidi Sagali Benatira Barzuza. It's enough for just a small protection that costs only a zuz. But if he makes the fourth wall himself and he makes an expensive one, then he's showing that he does want an expensive wall. Now, the Gemara gives us another case. Tajma.
Well, why can't I say that I'm only building the fourth wall because there's three already? Meaning I would have never built the wall. But once there's three, you get what I'm saying?
Well, but why are you building the fourth wall? Because you like to be encircled.
Once it's there.
Right? But, okay. But if you like to be encircled, then you chip in.
Then, got it.
Now, nice try. Even Marshall wouldn't fall for that. Tajma. Marshall, you could sit back. It's okay. You just rest. Tajma. Now here,
Internet is unstable.
here, what happens is Marshall lives on the first floor, and Mark lives on the second floor. Tajma, Bayis v'aliyah shel shnayim shenaflu, and the house caved in. So now Mark wants to, he wants to live on the second floor. He can't live on the second floor until Marshall builds the first floor. Good luck, Marshall. Good luck, Mark. Amar balo aliyah lebalabayis. So Mark tells Marshall, live nice. So Marshall says, I'm sorry, but I'm, skiing in Aspen. And after I ski in Aspen, I'm going on a cruise to Hawaii. And then after going on a cruise to Hawaii, then I'm going to eat a lot of Frankfurters. So, Marshall doesn't want to. So what does Mark have the right to do? Hari balho aliyah, in such a case, Hari balho aliyah, Mark, the second floor, bona bayis, he could build the first floor, v'yaysheba, and live in it, until Marshall compensates him for the first floor, and then he goes and builds the second floor. Very, very simple. Simple. But when Marshall gives Mark the money that he spent building the first floor so that now Mark could build the second floor, does Mark have to pay him for the time that he was living in the first floor? Marshall has to pay him for building the first floor. But we don't deduct from it the fact that Mark was living on Marshall's property. So this is a case of Zenene v'Zeloi Chaser. Mark benefited. Marshall didn't lose out anything because he said he doesn't want to build. And that shows that Zen and V'zeloi Chaser is positive. Says Gemara, no, it's different. Because Shani Hasam the base of Aliyah Mishtabed. Because Mark has a taina, I want my house on the second floor. You're holding me up, that's your fault. I don't have to pay when it's your fault. So Shani Hasam the base of Aliyah Mishtabed. The house is meshubed to Mark on the second floor. And as long as Marshall doesn't build it, so then he has to reimburse Mark for not having a place to live. Tajma, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Rabbi Yehuda says, you have a Seder tonight?
Not really, but my wife is not well.
Oh, she should feel better.
Yesterday I didn't go to anywhere.
So maybe she'll join the Chumash here?
Yeah, she might join.
Yeah. So why don't you stay a few more minutes? No, you can't. We're almost finished. No, she's worried. Okay. She tell her we all wish her a full shalema. Okay. Those that are joining us for the Chumash here will begin shortly. Those that are joining us for the Chumash here. Tajma. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Av Zeh Ador B'Chatz Chaver Shloi Midatoi. And this is our case, where Marshall lives in Stephen's house without his knowledge. So Shmami no zen and v'zeloi chaser chayim. Says Gemara, no, there it's different, because there it was a new house, and when he lived in the new house, he caused the walls to get darkened, he caused the floor to get scratched. So that's a case of zen and v'zel chaser. Shani hasa mishum shachrurisa dashaisa. It's the darkening of the walls. So Shilchua Bei Ravami, they sent from the academy of Ravami, Amar, and they said, V'chima Osaloi. Here they sided with Marshall. Believe it or not. Could anybody believe that? I think Marshall is not here. He left at the right time. Says the Gemara, what did Marshall do to Stephen? What did he cost him? He wasn't using it till January. And what damage did he do? He doesn't have to pay. They asked the question to, so Shilchua Bei Rabami, they sent this question to Reb Ami, and Reb Ami answered that Marshall is potter. Shilchua Kamei de Reb Chia bar Abba, they sent the same inquiry to Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar, and Amar Nisyashe B'Dava. We have to be ma'ayin into it. We have to look into it. They asked him again when they didn't hear from him. You're going to send me so many times. If I found a svara as a proof, do you think I wouldn't have sent it to you? Itma Rav Kahana Rab Yochanan. Rab Kahana says name Rab Yochanan. Marshall does not have to pay. Rabbi Avoa, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Avoa, and the name Rabbi Yochanan says, you have to pay Steve. You have to pay Stephen. Amar Papa, Hodi Rabbi Avo. This din that Rabbi Avo says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, you have to pay in the case of Zenena, Vizeloi Chaser, La Beferish Itmar. He didn't say it outright. Ela Mechlola Itmar. It was inferred from a teaching. What was the teaching that it was inferred from? The Tanan, Notel Evan Oikorish Shel Hektish. If a gizber of Hektish, a treasurer of Hektish, took a rock or a beam of Hektish, now he's not moyel by taking it, because he's the gizber. Wherever he has it, it's in the rishus of Hektish. So Aizeh Loimal, Nosna L'Chaveiroi, if he gives it to Shelley, so then when he gives it to Shelley, it goes out of the Rishus of Hektish, so the Gizber is Moil. Who Moil? The Chaver Loi Moil. Shelley is not Moil, because once he gave it to him, it already went out of the Rishus of Hektish. Bana L'Seich Beisai. If he built it, the Gizber built it into his home, Harizel Loi Moil, he's not Moil, At Sheyidor Tachtea Shava Pruta. He's not Moil unless he lives under its shade for the value of a pruta. Now, obviously, when it says he built it into his home, it doesn't mean he banged it in. Because if he nailed it in, then he was kind of with shinui, it would go out of Rishus of Hektish, and then he's moil even before he benefited a pruta. And that's what the Gemara adds, V'amar Shmuel v'hu she'anicha al pi aruba. He put it on the top of the skylight. He didn't have to do any banging. So when he lives under it, a pruta, he's moil. But why? Since Hektish was not using the beam, that's a case of zen and v'zeloi chasa. Hektish didn't need the beam. So it's a case of zen and v'zeloi chasa. So you see that you're chayiv in a case of zen and v'zeloi chasa. V'yosef Rabbi Avo kamed Rabbi Yochanan v'kamer mishmei d'Shmuel. Rabbi Avo sat before Rabbi Yochanan and said in the name of Shmuel, Zoisai Meres, Hador b'chotzer chaveiro shaloi midaytoi. If you live in someone's premises without their permission, tzorech lahalos lo yischar, you have to pay, because you see it's considered a benefit, even though Hektish wasn't using the beam. The beam wasn't necessary, that's why the Gizber used it. V'shasekle, and Rabbi Yochanan was quiet. So he inferred from that Rabbi Yochanan holds, Zen ene v'zeloi chaser chayiv. Iu saver midishasik moidislei. He admitted to it. However, v'lohi, the truth of the matter is Rabbi Yochanan didn't even pay attention to the equation. It's not the same. You see, the whole point where Marshall lived in Stephen's house is only because Stephen didn't tell him not to. If Stephen would have told him not to, then he would have to pay. By Hektish, since the Torah says, Lo simul boy mal, that's tantamount to Hektish telling him you can't use it. Says the Gemara, Kirabba, the Amar Rabba Hektish shaloi midas. Using Hektish without any knowledge is kehedyet midas dummy. It's like using Stephen's property where Stephen said don't use it. Because by Hektish, the Torah says like simul bomal, you're not allowed to use it. So again, it's not a proof to our case. Our case is where Marshall was in the property of Stephen without Stephen protesting, where Marshall benefited because he didn't have to go to the Marriott, but Stephen didn't lose out because he wasn't renting it until January. So that's a case of zen ene v'zeloi chaser, and that's the case that we're having the whole quarrel about, the milei mal yasa. And now Rabbi said, I did the Mishnah Yomis already because of the Chumash here, so that's already on Kol Halashon, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, Torah, anytime. And now we're going to do the Chumash here.